I simulated the next 10 seasons of Formula 1 on the F1 Manager game to see what will happen in the next 10 seasons, who will become world champion, who will be drivers champions, what driver transfers and what regulation changes will happen. Stay tuned to find out. If you guys like content like this, I really appreciate it if you guys can hit that like and subscribe button. It takes forever to simulate on F1 Manager, as you have to go into every race and watch the whole race on like times 32 speed. And with that being said, enjoy the video, everyone. In 2023, Max Verstappen wins his third consecutive World Drivers' Champion if we include 2021 and 2022, as he takes 12 wins on the year, scores 402 points, and finishes P1. Charles Leclerc finishes P2 with 5 wins, 359 points. George Russell finishes P3 with 2 wins, 350 points. George Russell has 1 win, 259 points to finish P4. Carlos Sainz has 1 win, 250 points, finishes P5. And Fernando Alonso, look at this, finishes in P6 with 2 wins and 249 points. Red Bull win their second consecutive Constructors title if you count 2022, with Ferrari P2, Mercedes P3, Aston Martin P4, Alpine P5, McLaren P6, Alfa Romeo P7, Haas P8, AlphaTauri P9, and everybody say it with me, Williams in dead last. In the driver transfer market, Valtteri Bottas decides to retire from Formula 1. That moves Théo Pourchaire to Alfa Romeo, Ayumu Iwasa goes to AlphaTauri, and Nick de Vries heads to free agency. Honestly, quite realistic predictions for 2023. And in the regulation change department going into 2024, there is a regulation change to the chassis department. I did generalize all the departments, so just say, for example, it's like a halo change or a front wing like monocoque change, or just something very, very in detail. I decided to just overgeneralize it so it's easier for you guys to remember, so I don't have like 30 things changing in the regulation change department, just to let you guys know in this video. Get it. In 2024, Charles Leclerc wins his first ever World Drivers' Championship. It's something you absolutely love to see. If you guys saw in the intro, I was wearing a Ferrari shirt. Leclerc takes 13 wins, scores 404 points, and finishes P1. Max Verstappen takes 5 wins, 358 points, finishes P2. Fernando Alonso, what a legend, it takes 4 wins, 301 points, finishes P3. And Lance Stroll takes 1 win, 256 points, and finishes P4. Quite rough seasons for Sainz and Perez, not gonna lie. Ferrari win their first Constructors title since 2008 and their first Drivers title since 2007, with Aston Martin in P2 and Red Bull P3. Mercedes finished P4, followed by Alfa Romeo, Haas, McLaren, Alpine, AlphaTauri, and Williams in dead last. In the driver transfer market, Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso, and Kevin Magnussen all decide to retire from Formula 1, even though Haas had a really good season. Albon goes to Mercedes, that moves Ollie Bearman to Haas, Mick Schumacher's back and he goes to Williams, and Felipe Drugovich goes to Aston Martin. Once again, all these driver transfers are actually quite possible, which could happen in real life. And heading into 2025, we have a regulation change to the aero and power departments. In 2025 Season 3, Charles Leclerc's done it again. He takes 15 wins, 408 points, finishes P1, and wins his second consecutive World Drivers' Championship. Max Verstappen finishes P2 with 6 wins, 368 points, so there was kind of a title fight there, but not really. And Carlos Sainz finishes P3 with 2 wins, 301 points. He was alright, and Perez didn't get another win. I guess there's not many street tracks in 2025. Ferrari win their second consecutive Constructors title, followed by Red Bull P2, Mercedes P3, McLaren move up to P4, good for them, Aston Martin P5, Haas P6, Alfa Romeo P7, Alpine P8, AlphaTauri P9, and Williams stay in dead last. In the driver transfer market, Lando Norris, big move here, he goes to Mercedes, Alexander Albon goes to Aston Martin, and Lance Stroll goes to McLaren, so I guess Lawrence Stroll bought McLaren, so that's pretty cool. And in going into 2026 Season 4, there is a regulation change to the chassis departments. In 2026, we have an insane title fight between Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen, and Charles Leclerc has come out on top as he takes 9 wins on the year, 355 points. He finishes P1. Max Verstappen takes 9 wins, 349 points, 6 points between the two. He finishes P2. Carlos Sainz takes 2 wins, 259 points, and finishes P3. And Sergio Perez takes 3 wins, 246 points, and finishes P4. Ferrari win their 3rd consecutive constructors title, followed by Red Bull P2, Mercedes P3, Aston Martin P4, McLaren P5, Alpine P6, Alfa Romeo P7, Haas P8, AlphaTauri P9, and Williams stay in dead last. In the driver transfer market, Yuki Tsunoda goes to Red Bull. That moves Dennis Hauger to AlphaTauri. The GOAT, Nicholas Latifi, he's back in Williams. And same with Daniel Ricciardo. He's back in Formula 1, and he also goes to Williams. That moves Mick Schumacher and Logan Sargent, both to free agency. And heading into 2027, there is no regulation change. In 2027, it was the year of domination as Max Verstappen got 20 wins on the year, 506 points to finish P1. You guys heard that right. 20 wins. What? That's unbelievable. Yuki Tsunoda scored 3 wins and got 248 points. This was arguably the most boring season in Formula 1 history, as Red Bull won their 2nd constructors title of the simulation with Ferrari P2, Mercedes P3, McLaren P4, Aston Martin P5, Alpine P6, Alfa Romeo P7, Haas P8, Williams P9, and AlphaTauri in dead last. Look at this, Daniel Ricciardo and Latifi carrying Williams to P9. There are no driver transfers heading into 2028, but there is a regulation change to durability and power, so it looks like the entire engines are changing, which is pretty awesome. In 2028, Season 6 of this simulation, Charles Leclerc's back on top in Formula 1. Looks like that regulation change really hurt Red Bull, as he takes 12 wins on the year, 402 points, and finishes P1. Oscar Piastri, look at this, McLaren's up here now. He gets 6 wins, scores 376 points, and finishes P2. He's a really good driver in this simulation, by the way. He's really good. If you want to get a driver for the future, you pick Oscar Piastri and Ollie Behrman, honestly. Carlos Sainz takes 3 wins, 303 points, finishes P4. Lando Norris takes 1 win at 288 points, finishes P4, and George Russell takes 1 win at 263 points and finishes P5. Ferrari win their 4th constructors title of the simulation, followed by McLaren P2, Mercedes P3, Red Bull dropped down 3 spots to finish P4, Aston Martin P5, Alpine P6, Alfa Romeo P7, Haas P8, Williams P9, and AlphaTauri stay in dead last. In the driver transfer market, Pierre Gasly goes to McLaren. Oliver Behrman goes to Aston Martin. I guess he was sick and tired of waiting for the Ferrari call. Daniel Ricciardo goes to Haas. Logan Sargent goes back to Williams. And Lance Stroll goes to Alpine, so I guess his dad bought Alpine. In the regulation change department, there is a regulation change going to the chassis departments for 2029. In 2029, Charles Leclerc becomes a 5-time World Drivers' Champion, but he had a great title fight with Verstappen once again. You love to see it. Charles Leclerc takes 6 wins on the year, 369 points, and finishes P1. Max Verstappen had 6 wins, 349 points, finishes P2. Carlos Sainz also had 6 wins, 339 points, finishes P3. So it really was a 3-way title fight, but Leclerc came out on top. You love to see it. And Yuki Tsunoda takes 5 wins, 302 points, and finishes P4. Honestly, this is probably one of the most competitive seasons of all time, or at least in recent memory, as 4 drivers had 5+ wins and 4 drivers had 300+ points. You love to see it. Ferrari win their 5th constructors title of the simulation, followed by Red Bull P2, McLaren P3, Mercedes P4, Alpine P5, Aston Martin P6, Alfa Romeo P7, Haas P8, Williams P9, and AlphaTauri in dead last. In the driver transfer market, Nico Hülkenberg and Daniel Ricciardo both decide to retire from Formula 1. That moves Felipe Drugovich and Yuri Vips to Haas. So they just sacked off their old drivers and brought in new drivers. That worked very well in 2021. And heading into 2030, there is a regulation change, a major regulation change to power aero, and chassis, this will likely shake up the grid quite a lot. In 2030, we got Lando Norris on top of Formula 1 now as he takes 12 wins, 422 points to finish P1. George Russell takes 5 wins, 365 points to finish P2. Charles Leclerc takes 4 wins, 303 points, finishes P3. And Max Verstappen takes 2 wins, 286 points, and finishes P4. Mercedes win their first constructors title of the simulation, followed by Ferrari P2, Red Bull P3, McLaren P4, Alpine P5, Aston Martin P6, Alfa Romeo P7, AlphaTauri P8, Williams P9, and Haas in dead last. I missed saying that. Honestly, I did miss saying that. In the driver transfer market, Esteban Ocon decides to retire from Formula 1, and that moves Victor Martins to Alpine. About time he finally got the call. He's like, what, like 30 now? And in the regulation change department, there is no regulation change heading into season 9. In 2031, Lando Norris becomes a 2-time World Drivers' Champion, and I don't know what happened to George Russell this season as he took no wins at all, but Lando Norris takes 10 wins, 399 points to finish P1. Max Verstappen takes 9 wins, 389 points to finish P2. Great title battle there, and Verstappen's lost 3 title fights in this simulation. That's quite embarrassing on his end. And Charles Leclerc takes 4 wins, 302 points, and finishes P3. Like I said, no George Russell. I don't know what the heck he's doing. Mercedes win their second constructors title in a row, followed by Red Bull P2, Ferrari P3, McLaren P4, Aston Martin P5, Alpine P6, Alfa Romeo P7, Williams P8, AlphaTauri P9, and let's say it all together, and Haas in dead last. You love to see it. And Ollie Behrman goes to Ferrari at the end of the season, with Yuki Tsunoda going to Aston Martin. Ayumu Iwasa goes to Red Bull, and Pietro, just kidding, I think it's Enzo Fittipaldi, he goes to AlphaTauri. And heading into 2032 in the final season of the simulation, there is a regulation change to the aero and power departments. And in the last and final season of the simulation, Max Verstappen comes out on top as he takes 14 wins on the year, 421 points, great season from him as he finishes P1. Charles Leclerc takes 7 wins, 379 points to finish P2, and Ayumu Iwasa takes his first 2 wins in Formula 1. He scores 276 points and finishes P3. Red Bull win their third constructors title of the simulation, followed by Ferrari P2, Mercedes P3, McLaren P4, Alpine P5, Aston Martin P6, Alfa Romeo P7, Williams P8, AlphaTauri P9, and Haas in dead last. Now guys, we're going to take a look at the final stats for all 10 years. And at the end of all 10 years, this is what the final stats look like. Ferrari won 5 constructors titles, Red Bull won 3, and Mercedes won 2. It's kind of cool to see 3 teams winning constructors titles, as in my other simulations, usually 2 teams dominate. Sometimes it's 4, sometimes it's 5. This time, it was 3. In terms of World Drivers' Champions, not the most diverse out there, as Charles Leclerc had 5, Verstappen had 3, and Lando Norris had 2. And then in race winners, in my last simulation I did on F1 Manager, there was a lot more race winners than this, but we had a great career and title fights between Verstappen and Leclerc. Verstappen overall had 83 wins, carried by his 20-win season. Charles Leclerc had 75 wins, and if these guys' careers end like this, I'd absolutely love it. This would be the rivalry of all time. Sainz had 14 wins, Yuki Tsunoda had 8, George Russell had 7, Fernando Alonso had 6 at the ripe age of like 50, Sergio Perez had 5, Ayumu Iwasa had 2, and the GOAT Lance Stroll had 1 win. So guys, that is going to wrap it up for today's video. If you guys did enjoy and you want to see more simulation videos like this, hit that like button, subscribe, share with your friends, and with that being said, see you guys next time. Goodbye.